Hello lovelies and welcome to today's video. My name's Alia and I'm so glad you stopped by. Today we're talking about type 3 diabetes. Crazy term. Haven't heard of type 3 diabetes? Well, it's been all over my social media, and so I thought it's about time I talk about it, explain it, and go a little bit into the depth of it so that these terms don't give you a fright. They actually just make good sense to you all. So the reason I've chosen a little bit of a controversial or a very new term to discuss with you guys is I've actually seen it popping up a lot on social media. It's all over a lot of people's threads on Facebook, especially on Facebook videos, and a few reels as well on the topic, and it just keeps on popping up in my socials. And I guess it's because I do follow a lot of doctors and chiropractors and you know, people in the health industry, because that's where I myself come from, and I guess that's what the algorithm shows me. But I wonder whether those of you who watch me would get the same kind of pop-ups, and I just want to explain it all to you guys because I feel like it's a little bit of a buzzword at the moment. It's not, or term, it's not actually defined properly yet or in the common language properly yet. And I think that when things come into play like this, it's very easy to become misunderstood. So why are they calling it type 3 diabetes? So what do we know about diabetes? Let's just start with that. So just to break it down a little bit, we know that diabetes comes from high sugar, high blood glucose levels, or variable, more usually, variable glucose levels in the blood going very high, very low, or just staying at a somewhat high level in some people's case, due to insulin resistance. Insulin is an extremely important hormone. We don't have reserves of it. It gets produced as it's needed, and when you have more sugar, more is produced. So as a result, when you eat a lot of sweets, for example, or a lot of carbohydrates, more importantly, so it could be even savory carbohydrates, you will produce a lot of insulin. That's the normal response. The idea is, however, that we would eat steadily throughout the day, nothing too extremely rich in sugars, whether they're complex or simple or sweet or savory, any kind of carbohydrate, and not allow our sugars to drop too low either, so by starving ourselves or eating incorrect food. So what's happened in the last couple of generations is that we've been eating a lot of food with processed carbohydrates. So food that is heavily processed and therefore is actually food that's a lot more rich in carbohydrate, even though it may not seem that way. So the nutrition seems to be there, but it's actually got a lot of hidden wasted calories in the food. So you'll get packaging that says good source of calcium, good energy, diet, low sugar. That's my favorite one. Horrible. Low sugar often means that there is actual sugar in there. It's just not literal sugar. So it won't be, actual sugar cane, but there'll be other sweeteners and other carbohydrate in there hidden just to ruin your health. But to taste good and to last longer on the shelf, but to ruin your health. So forth and so on. So because of these foods, and because of the fact that we don't have to stand there and bake our breads anymore, we just go to the shop and buy them. We don't have to grow our own crop and eat seasonally anymore. Everything's available to us 365 days a year. Our bodies have been under constant stress, essentially. So what's the solution, in my opinion? Do you stop eating bread? Do you stop eating carbohydrates? Do you only go on a protein keto type diet? I mean, it works for some people. It works very well for some people. I know a lot of people who've done very well and turned their health right around and come out of pre-diabetic into good health by doing that type of thing. But I personally believe that that's not sustainable, at least not for most people. Most people will still want to have a piece of cake here and there, or have some carbs here and there. The other thing is that when we do eat these foods, at the end of the day, we do have a limited resource for certain nutrition, because at the end of the day, if you're going to be buying your stuff at the shop, even at the Whole Foods type foods and through the shops, there is still going to be some kind of additive in there to keep it shelf stable. Even if it's a natural additive, like, I don't know, can't think of one right now, but something like a salt of some sort, or something just to keep it stable on the shelf, right? Stop it from going moldy, or stop it from changing its texture too soon and things like that. And that's fine. Some of this stuff is normal and it's okay for us to eat, and maybe even good for us to eat a little bit of, and so forth and so on. But when we're buying it from the shelf, off the shelf, we don't know what's in there. So at the end of the day, we could be sort of being tricked a little bit. So what's my solution? My solution has always been, and it's always worked for me, is moderation. If you're prepared to educate yourself and be a bit of a health nut and really commit to a lifestyle of eating proper whole foods, not just from a whole food shop, but an actual whole food that where it came from, what's in there to the very last ingredient, and you can measure your salt levels and you can measure your sugar levels and all that sort of stuff. Good for you, but that is a huge commitment, and I don't think that's for most people. Moderation is great. So you do have a little bit of carb in your diet, enough to sustain you. Carbs are really good because they're what we need to function. Our body needs equal parts carbohydrate and protein for fuel. Well, not equal parts, actually. Protein is a lot harder to access and carbs are a lot easier to access. We store a tiny little portion of protein and a huge truckload of carbs for our energy, or sugar for our energy. The problem is that if we eat a lot of carbs, we don't ever access that storage, and that's where you get this stress on your body. So type 3 diabetes. What happens is that when you don't access that storage, or if you're constantly fueling with the wrong fuel or a low quality fuel, because it's full of preservatives, additives, or that you're eating more carbs than you think you are, that sort of thing, or the food itself is so processed that the carbohydrate, by the time your body breaks it down and gets to that level of being usable, it's burnt too much. It's easier for the body to convert it to sugar than to actually use it, type thing. So if you're eating well and you still find that your health isn't great, this is the kind of thing that can happen. So the insulin gets really stressed because it's being produced way more often than what we actually think it is. And then you end up with like a burnout or a resistance to the cells, because if you produce insulin too frequently, then what happens is the cells end up going, nope, had enough of you now, and not wanting to use it anymore to convert into energy, sugar into energy. Now, when that happens, a lot of things go wrong. It's not just diabetes, although that's type 2 diabetes is the most common response that people have, or obesity is another one that we see a lot. And then we start going into the area of comorbidities. So a lot of people with diabetes or obesity will also have heart disease, will also have high cholesterol, will also have inflammation, will also have gout, will also have a whole bunch of other stuff, bleeding gums even, sore wrists, muscle aches, all that sort of stuff. The reason is that because we're not getting enough magnesium, we're not getting enough zinc, and we're not getting enough calcium. These are the things that we would normally be getting from whole foods. And if you're not getting it in your diet, initially I would suggest is to take it through a supplement until you've cleaned up your diet, if that's what you're planning to do. Now, that comorbidity stuff is now being explored into the realm of a part of those comorbidities, like what I've just mentioned, could possibly be Alzheimer's or dementia. And the reason is because that we need zinc and magnesium and calcium and all those good nutrients for all cell function, not just for weight loss, not just for healthy bloods when the doctors check, not just for good energy, but for everything. Every little cell in our body, from our hair growth to our skin condition to anything, relies heavily on our second brain. Our second brain is our gut. So an absolutely beautifully balanced gut biome, microbiome, is insanely important to our health. So another really good hack for that is eating foods that are rich in prebiotics. So we're talking about cruciferous vegetables is a really, really important one for just about every single thing in our life. But again, if you're not a big veggie fan, that's okay. You can make it into a smoothie and you'll never even know it's there, or into a sauce, or you can just take a supplement. We live in a day where everything has been freeze-dried and made into a powder or a tablet, and it's fine. And that can also be a whole food source. When you support your gut, the rest of your cells can function, including the brain. The brain is much more dependent, I would say, long-term than the rest of our body. You might get away without cancer, you might get away without diabetes, but you won't get away with healthy daily brain function. You'll still have brain fog, you'll still have memory issues, you'll still get headaches, you'll still have other symptoms more to do with the head area. The reason this has been a really big buzz for me, or has really popped up for me, is because that's really closely linked to macular degeneration. In my mind, and this is purely me, this is not any research, this is not anything, this is just purely what I've witnessed clinically, macular degeneration, to me, is the dementia of the retina. It's the degradation of cells that purely stop functioning, then debris or rubbish gathers at the macula, because it's another part of the body, just like the brain, that's really heavily dependent on all those nutrients and a good blood supply. And when they degrade and all this rubbish builds up, it gets to a generalized death of the area. And it takes years. Okay, so those of you out there who have been told you have a few macular changes, do not despair. I have seen people turn their progression right around simply by not changing their diet, but including really important key ingredients in their diet. And that's all it takes. You don't need to stop having that cake. You just need to add that smoothie, salad, veggie sauce, veggie soup, steamed broccoli into your diet. You don't like broccoli? That's okay. Bok choy or broccolinis or pumpkin. Everybody loves pumpkin, especially this time of year. In the northern hemisphere, pumpkin's huge. Sweet corn, especially if you can get a heirloom or a really natural organic sweet corn. Hate that word organic. That's another buzzword that I'll do a video on one day. But you know, something that's been bought from the farmer's market would be really ideal. You don't have to go crazy with your diet. You don't have to do drastically anything. I hate drastic changes. They never ever last. So take it easy is my advice. One step at a time, one new ingredient at a time. But maybe you'll change out your steak and creamy sauce one night for, say, a steamed or grilled fish with asparagus. Delicious. I swear it's probably one of my favorite foods, yum. But nothing wrong with steak. But the idea is that you get variation. You get a lot of seasonally fresh foods into your diet. And if you can't access wherever you are something readily all year round, that's okay. You're not supposed to eat the same thing all year round. But if you're worried about your nutrition levels, let's say in the wintertime, if there's, you know, the farmers markets aren't really that various and so forth in your region, that's okay. Frozen, snap frozen vegetables are just as good as fresh. There, I said it. They absolutely maintain the nutritional level. And the way you prepare them is to actually blanch them. You don't cook them. You just throw hot water on them and straight into ice or straight into cold water to stop the cooking process. It defrosts them. It makes them edible without actually killing that much nutrition like what cooking would. So what is my takeaway message from all this? So type 3 diabetes is referring to the associated disease or the associated degradation of cells in dementia. I think we're going to see type 3 diabetes referred to as all inflammatory or nutrition deprived disease around the body, or cell degradation around the body, that has been linked directly to insulin resistance or to the way the cells respond to too much insulin being produced. It doesn't mean that if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic you're going to end up with dementia, but we are seeing a lot of dementia. I think a lot of it is just because we're living longer and these diseases may have popped up one way or another. We're seeing a generation that survived the war as children, and World War II as children get older now, so they may have had periods of deprivation and eaten really well the rest of their lives, but still, you know, something just didn't develop well in their childhood. So we don't really know how the next generation is going to get affected, but what we do know is the next generation has actually had the opposite problem, had too much plenty, too much processed, too much shelf stable, too much additive, too much poison, basically, edible poison in their lives. And we're going to see the effect of that now that the next generation, the sort of boomers, are getting to that point. And that's okay. The post-war generation is going to have their own sicknesses, and then the next generation is going to have their own sicknesses. It's fine. But what the research is now showing us, that when we have insulin resistance, it doesn't stop at diabetes type 2. It doesn't stop at general inflammation. It will actually spread further and cause other diseases such as dementia. And that's the big one at the moment. So when you hear that term, that's basically what it's relating to. Okay, my lovelies, I hope this video did explain some of these terms that are just being, I feel like, just being thrown around there. It's great because it gets attention. You know, you get, 10 seconds or 15 seconds in a reel, and it's just enough time to throw out a buzzword, get your attention, and then explain it a little bit in hopes that people follow you and watch the next reel with more explanation. So I think the intent is excellent. It's getting that information out there. It's getting people asking the questions. It certainly got me doing my research. It's nothing new. unfortunately. It's nothing new. We've known for a long time that diabetes or macular degeneration or whatever it is related back to diet. People who are into their whole foods or into their natural living or non-tox living will know about the gut biome and will know the intense importance of gut health. Probably that's the most important thing in our health is gut health. So that's not new. What this is a linkage between the two and proof in the research that there is that link and what that link is. And it is a way of allowing the public to access that education. So don't get a shock of all this, but maybe a bit of a kickstart to your way to health. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you have subscribed. Definitely subscribe. And for more everyday craziness in my wonderful life, follow along on Instagram. There's definitely lots of cute photos and reels and things like that going on there. And yeah, I hope you follow along. Wherever you are around the world, my lovelies, I hope you're having an amazing day. I hope you are enjoying the high holiday season if you're celebrating. And I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.